So grateful to be here and very happy to discuss these incredibly important and hard to talk about topics. He has an incredible backbone and staggering moral fiber. Howie is totally committed, completely ethical, totally admirable. No pressure if you can hear this, but honestly, Howie's a hero to me.
John, you joined us before, and it was pretty incredible kind of testimony you gave, and you just devoted your life to advocacy for child trafficking, and even 9/11 truth. Maybe you could explain to us, in the last decade, what do you think the most challenging parts of coming alive on some of these issues have been?
Probably the hardest thing, and it continues, is just realizing that pretty much everything that I was told and taught since I was in grade school is probably not true. And hello and good evening to the Traffic Report from the very windy Appalachian Mountains to the home of the NFC champion, Philadelphia Eagles. Good evening. How are you, Howie?
Doing well. How are you, John?
Not bad. And this is our trilogy, our third show of Catherine's story. And I wish Catherine was here every night. So, good evening, Catherine. How are you?
I am well, John. Thank you. And thank you for having me. And I have enjoyed myself. And, I've listened back to the shows, and I was actually really happy with them both. And that never happens. Never happens.
Because part of the thing that I do is I try to get the replay out, when it comes out. Sometimes it's out 20 minutes after the show. Sometimes it's the next morning. But so I listen to the show, as I'm doing that. I'm tweeting it out and sharing it on Facebook, et cetera, et cetera. And I would have to agree with you. It's and I keep track of the stats. I think it's the most listened to series of
Catherine,
shows
either?
Of the year.
Yes. Can you hear me, Howard?
Now I can. I can hear you.
Howie.
I couldn't hear anything for a second.
Mm-hmm. Well,
2 seconds.
What I was saying was, I listen to the shows, and as I'm posting the replays, and the two shows that Catherine, I would have to agree with her. I'm really happy with both of them, and incidentally, I keep track of the stats, and they're the most listened to shows maybe since we've started doing this. So pretty cool.
Well, it's real, and survivor stories are incredibly important, and unfortunately, not everybody is able to talk about it in such a way that you are, and that what makes you even extra special. And hopefully, talking about it will give some other survivors the strength to, be able to talk about what happened to them also, and not feel so alone.
I really absolutely believe so, Howard, because like on my Twitter and everything, since the beginning, it's always happened that I've had people DM me, first time people coming out saying, this happened to me. And so it absolutely encourages people. And I hope that they have gotten something out of, I really do try not to spare myself. It isn't, a great or a lot of fun, those things, and but it really is reality. And especially with the law enforcement side, I hope that people will understand that there is law enforcement that are crooked, they're bad, and they do horribly wicked things. And there are a lot of good ones, but like in our town, practically every dadgum one of them were bad.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And just regarding the shows, I mean, that's the whole point, I think, of what we've done, from the beginning, is to get the therapeutic value of one survivor helping another out there and in play. And it's working. You can see it work. It's working on Facebook. It's working, on Twitter, on the phone, the networks that are forming. And that's what it's about. And I believe this, to every fiber of my being, that's what's really going to change, the whole society is the survivors that are coming forward. And I got a chance I've tweeted out, the show's tweeted out, and the Facebook has been on the survivor impact statements on Nassar all week. And I just got to cover this briefly because it's that judge, what a great judge, and how the atmosphere has changed. And Nassar, I don't know, I'm sure you guys heard about this, but he wrote a 6-page whining, complaint to the judge, trying to get out of having to sit there and listen to the survivors. And the judge,
no, I don't know that. Oh my gosh! Wow!
And the judge addressed it in open court. She basically told him, "I don't care if it takes 5 hours, 5 days, or 5 years. If we have to physically bring you into this courtroom and tape you into that chair," I'm paraphrasing, of course, "but you will listen to this. I don't care how you're feeling. These few hours compared to the years of pain and suffering that you've caused are nothing. And the piece of paper or these pieces of paper that you've written this whining excuse on aren't worth the paper that they're written on." It was beautiful. So this culture is changing. The court system's changing. We have good judges. It's great. I mean, great stuff is happening every day.
Yep. So. John, but I just want to jump in for a second. Now that everybody, they want to, a judge wants to make that kind of statement, and you're going to sit there and listen. But once again, all the attention is, everything is shifted onto Larry Nassar. However, Larry Nassar was surrounded by a lot of people, like the head coach of Michigan State, Kathy Clegg, I believe her name was.
Yeah.
The entire USA Gymnastics organization.
That's still in place, a lot of it. But.
Yeah, Bella Carosi and his wife.
Yeah. They shut down Bella's thing. So that's.
But all I'm saying is, people will come in and be like, "Yeah, they're getting tough on this guy and all this stuff." But meanwhile, and I'm not saying that the head coach Kathy Clegg was molesting, raping children. However, she knew about it, and that is a crime. And so they'd like to make that stuff go away. And it's incumbent upon everybody to keep putting pressure on. Wait a second. Yeah. What about all the people that were around this guy for all these years? And I mean, things were reported. It wasn't like, yeah. So anyway, it's just that.
The FBI allowed him a period of time to continue raping kids, while they got their act together. Right,
and make sure, all. But I don't know. I think, Catherine, one thing about the show is like, sometimes we don't know what we're going to talk about, and some things will pop up, and obviously we want to talk about more with you, but obviously, and when we started talking, before the show tonight, you brought it up, and it's like a lot is going on right now in this country, and obviously starting with release the memo. and yes, you are a survivor, but also you are a voice. So, you brought that up. So I guess we should talk about Release the Memo a little bit. And I went to an article came out in the Daily Beast that and I wasn't home earlier, that your Senator Dianne Feinstein, is it Feinstein or Feinstein? Feinstein.
Feinstein.
It is Feinstein? Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right, I apologize. All right. So Dianne Feinstein and Adam Schiff, also one of your representatives, I don't know if he's in your district, sent a letter to Facebook and Twitter about...
Oh, I heard about this, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. About the hashtag Release the Memo, saying that it's been hijacked by Russian bots and they need to investigate.
Russia.
Are you kidding? This is literally their entire strategy. So,
right.
But they wrote Jack Dorsey and Adam Zuckerberg.
Right.
You cannot make this stuff up.
It's like taking a step into the Twilight Zone, honestly. And I can't stay there. I just can't stay there for very long. And you said something earlier about, we are talking to ourselves and talking, amongst ourselves rather than reaching other people. And, I do try to reach out to other people. And a lot of times, there'll be a flare up in a Twitter thing and, I'll try to get it squared away so where there's not hard feelings. And it works usually. But I can only take so much too, honestly. I'm not exaggerating. Then I have to get, off that crazy train.
Yeah, I hear you. But and there's work to be done. But obviously you don't. The old saying I've always heard is you can't walk into the woods for 4 years and get out in 4 months. We've got
right.
There's a lot of. But and like I agree with everything that you're talking about. But yeah, and what I try to do is you concentrate on the progress, and
you do that. I noticed that about you, John. That's a really good quality.
Well, it's survival to some extent, because like you're saying, it's so if you get bogged down in some of what's actually going on, it's like, wow, that's a hard place to stay and a hard place to live,
just the fact that there is a hashtag Release the Memo and this stuff is coming to light and everybody release it now, it needs to get out there. Listen, it's all coming. It is. Right. Right. And if we had a real media, probably, asking the tough questions. Like I got up early on Monday and, I watched my, I haven't done it a lot in months because I just can't listen to it anymore. The C-SPAN call-in show, and they're supposed to be unbiased, impartial, both sides and giving the whole story. They sat there for 3 hours talking about the government shutdown and, how it'll affect the government employees who have to pay their, bills and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying that they don't, but they're going to get paid. So, all right, the checks, it's not like they're not going to get paid, and they're on a vacation. They'll get all their back pay and everything like that. The check, whatever. But, just trying to make it out. And I'm sitting here myself, like, there's this Release the Memo. They're talking, and they went 3 hours. Oh, we want to hear from government employees and how the shutdown is affecting them. And it's nonsensical. They ignore. C-SPAN's in on it too. C-SPAN is way, way, way in on it. So anybody that thinks they're not, and it's also C-SPAN is 7 days a week, 7 a.m. To 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. They do a show, and you can call in. If you can sneak in there, you can say whatever you want, and it gets out there. I've done it, and it's one way to get, it's another way to get your voice, heard. and break up the controlled narrative.
You guys almost heard a live dog curse out, but I got around it. If there's any background noise, it's just me running back and forth, letting dogs in and out.
Chasing. Oh my goodness!
They worked me for a cookie at midnight. That's what they do. So,
and I just wanted to say one more thing because about all this. I guess I got home. I don't know. Was it Sunday when the secret society was trending on Twitter? And talking about the secret government and shadow government and deep state, and we know this stuff exists. But the Traffic report, we tweeted out a documentary, a Bill Moyers documentary done in 1987. It was basically in response to Iran-Contra and all the secret dealings of what was going on. Iran-Contra, CIA working outside the framework, of the government and the people and, for what they thought was greater good. And, this documentary talks a lot about Iran-Contra and then goes into the history of the CIA about how they deposed the democratically elected leader in Iran in 1953. John, what's his name? I don't have it.
Mossadegh.
Mossadegh. Oh, yes, that's I know it began with an M.
I love that name. Mossadegh. That's why I remember.
Yeah. Yes, the United States, the CIA, took him out, a democratically elected leader of Iran. So anybody who doesn't know that, this is not conspiracy. This is fact. And they tell you.
and they did it for it was like $25,000, I think, maybe $50,000. That was the cost. And what they said after they did that was, "Wow, that was cheap. We got to do this a lot." So they did.
Right, and the main reason why they wanted that they wanted to get rid of him is because he wanted to give the oil fields back to the people and basically kick out British Petroleum, and the British Petroleum, I believe, went to the United States and said, "Hey, we got to get rid of this," and they installed the Shah, and it's all documented. Same thing, Guatemala. I don't remember what year that was, but they took out Guatemalans democratically elected leaders.
Arbenz, yep.
John's history is much better than mine because
Chile.
Because he was taking land from the rich and giving it to the peasants so they can farm it themselves and bring them out. And what was it, the United Fruit Corporation? Was that what it was?
Yep. Dole.
I think. Yeah. Well, now it became Dole, but they were basically taking land from the United Fruit Corporation, and they literally went to the CIA and said, "Hey, you got to get rid of this guy," and they did. So when we to talk about like secret governments and shadow governments and deep states, listen. Watch this documentary. It's been tweeted out. It's called Bill Moyers, The Secret Government. And if you don't know some of these things, we've got a lot of swamp to drink. So,
well, that's kind of like the cleaned up version of the CIA and the garbage that they do. That's the not so bad stuff. I mean,
child trafficking is
right.
Yeah.
But if they're doing that stuff, like who are these guys? We don't know what they do. Yeah. We seen it with.
I want to cover just a little of, and I need to thank you two and a bunch of other people that said some prayers for me and my family as I went down to Tennessee. That sounds like a Johnny Cash song. I went down to Tennessee to deal with a convicted sex offender that's been harassing us, and and my wife, who really doesn't, she's an advocate in that she supports me, but I'm the one that does the show, and she's done her share of outing this individual on Facebook, which I'm eternally grateful to her for. But so she got dragged into this. So basically, this little turd had the audacity. These types. They're master manipulators. They know the legal system. They know how to manipulate it, and manipulated it to the point where we were served with a restraining order for basically outing this guy on Facebook, which is just so ridiculous. So the good news is, what I really want to talk about, because our particular case is not that important, but what is important is that, that the culture that has changed, the best thing that and always something good happens out of something bad. And what I found out, and I'm in the process, and we'll be talking about this on the show, is there's a group right here, just about where I live. It's a legal advocacy group that supports not only survivors of child sexual abuse, but advocates, people who are having problems with the Department of Children and Families, and that's what they do. They take, that's part of what they do. They do an awful lot, but everything we talk about, all the problems that we have, and part of what they do is help survivors or advocates that are being harassed by sex offenders, which I didn't know, but now I do know that. So I'll be utilizing them. There's also a rather large one down in Tennessee, and I
want to know who these groups are, because I'd love to pitch in a hand however that I can, promote them or whatever.
And you will. And this show has become a family, and everybody that's on it stays in touch. We have support groups and on Facebook, and you are going to know. That's what we're going to do. We're going to get this information out. And the good news is the legal system functioned as it was supposed to. And these restraining orders were dismissed almost immediately. And it's a good thing that this guy decided to tell the truth under oath, because he was about an away from probably leaving the courtroom in handcuffs when the judge, because in that venue, it's not a venue to, there's other venues that take on, people that file restraining orders as harassment and, basically
frivolously.
Yeah, exactly. But that wasn't the venue. But I tell you what, had he opened his mouth, but he was forced to admit in open court that there was no relationship whatsoever between either myself or my wife, other than online. And unless that relationship's present in the state of Tennessee, which is a very good law, you're not granted a restraining order. So that through him being forced to tell the truth, and that's what happened.
Because it's not a physical danger. You might have
and this
something, but that's civil.
Yeah, this little scumbag who, in his sick little mind, and broadcast all this on Facebook and elsewhere that he had this sexual relationship with my wife. It was just so sick, you wouldn't even believe it. We were waiting. All he had to do was say that, and we had we had real evidence there, which was basically a recording of everything that he said. And if the judge had heard that, I'm pretty sure he'd been leaving there in handcuffs. But he, at the last second, he pulled back and told the truth, and and actually him telling the truth got his restraining order thrown out. His girlfriend, accomplice, etc. Told the truth from the beginning, and hers were dismissed immediately. So that's just a little bit of real life stuff going on in our legal system, and what we'll be talking about more at a later time is these legal advocacy groups with lawyers that are basically volunteering their time to help victims of child sexual abuse, child advocates, victims of Department of Children and Families. So we're going to be talking a lot more about that. So I'm done talking about that, and I don't want to cut any more into Catherine's time, because these are the best shows I've heard that we've done, and I want to hear the rest of Catherine's story.
Well, kind of what I was thinking about talking about this evening is just like running through the highlights of experiences that I had with the pedophiles and such throughout, my life and stuff, starting with the babysitter's husband, that, there was gross molestation from the time of, 4-ish.
Melvin.
And, right. And, just, I said this before, he was just a little old man, and nobody, but he had a lot of victims. And so, the coach so then I did have the relationship with my stepfather. My mother married my stepfather, and he was a pedophile. And I really wasn't mistaken about whether he was a pedophile or not. But, and if people didn't hear before, what he would do is, with my sister and I, we would sit on his lap for whatever reason. We were, 8, 9, 10. We would sit on his lap, and he would have a full erection, and he would press his erection against our bottom.
Sexual assault, I think that's called.
Right. And then, of course, we outgrew, the age of sitting on his lap, and he just, moved on to other things. But he was not the only one. So I said that I had step siblings, and I did. So my stepbrothers and sisters, their mother, I knew her, of course, and for some reason I was with my stepsister and her husband and a group of people, and we went to go see their mother's father. So this is my stepsister's mother's father that we're going to go see. My stepsister's grandfather on the other side of the family. So we go to Grandpa's little farm, and there's a group of us. There's like 5 or 6 of us, and I was the only younger one there. So we go up to meet him, and he's an old guy, coveralls, toothless, the hairless thing and everything. So we go up, and I stand there like, "Oh, Grandpa, meet Kathy," and of course they were telling him who I was. He grabs me, and he grabs my crotch full on and French kisses me. And that was, yes. And I was like 9 or 10 at the time, somewhere around there. It's hard to remember, and so then, of course, my stepsister, grabbed me away from him and everything. But obviously that was not an unusual thing to have happen. So now we know that he is a freaking child molester, pedophile. And then my stepsister, she married a man that he did make a pass at me. And then he was later convicted and imprisoned for molesting his own daughter.
Yeah, and this is in Oklahoma, and you're surrounded by pedophiles, that are basically operating at will, and you have a police department, and you've got the guy who's sexually assaulting children on their lap, eventually becomes the assistant chief of this police department. And if I remember correctly, you've got 2 corrupt warring factions. One that really don't like pedophiles, but they're as corrupt. They murder people, and so you've got nowhere to turn. And that's the part of these stories that for me are just the hardest to hear, because I put myself into that child, and surrounded by adults whose job is to take care of children, whether they're the parents or they're a police officer or anybody that's involved in a child, and where that's why you're so much more of a miracle, Catherine, that being a survivor and to be able to be the communicator and the person that you are, it just makes the miracle even greater to me, but it's really, I always go back to that. And I guess because, I had, my own experience with sexual abuse, and, you go back to that kid that really, you're like, what the hell? These are adults, why I would say, they're supposed to protect you, so wow. I mean,
well, it was so much of, it was like, that's who my running people were. I had to keep an eye on these people my entire stinking life.
Yeah.
And do you know what I mean? And
yeah.
so
yeah.
hyper alert. And I was thinking about this. I think this is kind of an important point to make with survivors. Many times they live as though today's going to be their last day. And, that may show up in drugs, that may show up in hypersexuality or over shopping, in different ways.
Yeah, there's so many parallels between addiction and this, and I think it's really kind of the same thing with that goes on.
The thing is that when you're a survivor, and if you're living that, I don't know what it's like if you're not living that, but if you're living that, you don't know that couldn't be your last day. Because when I was little, the message was the chicken, got his head twisted off, and that was a, distinct message to me. And my stepfather, the games that he played with me, it was always, I am bigger than you, and I am the one who has all of the toys here, or I don't know how to describe that dynamic.
And you've done it, amazingly. But my favorite part is how you turn the tables on that with the gun, and God bless you.
Every now and again, I would get him. But this is another thing about survivors, and whenever you go through that, make no mistake, those people break you. They break you time and time and time again. But if you are that person that happens to be in that situation currently, don't you ever let them make you feel as though you're less than nothing, because that is not the truth. And that's their goal. That's their goal. Yeah, knowing that alone will get you through what you need to get through.
And that's so important, and that's your message, and it's basically been all the survivors' messages and our message that anybody listening to this out there, anybody who knows somebody who's going through it, that this message is getting out, and people are coming forward, and they're, that's the message that these, survivors need to hear that have not yet reported or haven't come forward, or that what they're being told by these predators is just not the truth. It's a way to keep them under control, and it's a typical mechanism used by these predators to control their victims. So,
well, I think, like with survivors, there's sometimes like a pride that says, they didn't break me. Yes, darling, they did. They broke us every freaking time that we had to do something we didn't want to do. But that does not mean that you didn't win.
Yeah.
It does not mean that you're less than nothing, because that is not the truth. And so,
and then I don't know if this was your personal experience, but it kind of was mine, because mine was an isolated event. And but what I did, I went out and broke myself after that. So it's just you're getting the same message. You're not worth anything. And if they're and I was very fortunate, because that was not with my upbringing. There was another time that would have been probably a much longer term and worse abuse, that just screaming no at this guy when I was 12 years old shocked the hell out of him and stopped what was going on. But whether they're there, that's the message. Whether it's one time or 1,000 times, there's sure different degrees, and I totally understand that. And the more it happens, and what you talk about in your experience, I mean that's like Missy had defined this so well. It's like extreme PST or PSTD, that occurs over decades, and that makes, again, I'm going to keep saying this, it makes you more of a miracle that you're on the other side of it, and obviously, I call you angels.
Well,
Catherine, can I don't mean to. This is kind of like, I don't know, it's almost like breaking news to me, and I caught it off of Pedigate News. There's the editor of Newsweek magazine of Pakistan. His name is hold on, I just had it.
It's going to be
no,
good.
John. This is he tweeted out today. His name is Fasi Ahmed.
Oh, that's
at the Real Flash. He tweeted out today. The sexual abuse of children will always exist. You can never eliminate it. Sometimes it leads to great art. So there's also that.
Wow. Oh, no.
And it would put him.
That sounds like because there's a lot of stuff going on in Pakistan and India that they're coming after these.
Oh, yeah. The stories. Yeah. The stories out of Pakistan and India, they don't just rape the children. They rape, brutalize, and then murder them. And we're talking like 4-year-olds. I've seen a whole bunch.
But you know what that reminds me of? The Hollywood community and people like Meryl Streep and Roman Polanski that raping the 13-year-old was somehow mitigated because it was, he's an artist.
Yeah. Well, he was responding. He was responding to the Me Too movement in Pakistan, launched by the rape and murder of a 7-year-old girl that's garnering a lot of attention right now. But I mean, I don't know what he was trying to convey. But just for him to say the sexual abuse of children will always exist, you can never eliminate it.
Sounds like a desperate pedophile to me. What does it sound like?
Yeah. It's like what do you mean we can never eliminate it? Okay, all right. How many articles has Newsweek done?
Yeah,
Pakistan. So very defensive. Anyway, so there's that.
He's gonna. I don't know. Who knows what happens in Pakistan? Who knows what Newsweek Pakistan even looks like, for crying out loud.
I just saw that and I'm like, I mean, man, I'm rendered speechless. But sometimes, I mean, and then to mock it by sometimes great art.
I would think, Catherine's testimony is, really puts that tweet where it belongs, which is in the shitter, because obviously it's not going to continue. There people are surviving for this, and there's people that are determined to eradicate it from the face of the earth. Catherine being one of them, and you and me too, Howie.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm sorry. I'm going to. I
want to ask Catherine.
That guy.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask Catherine, going forward, and you were obviously on Twitter when, this was not, an issue of, how many people would you say were in your group or in the early days, 2009, 2010?
Like how many followers did I have at the time?
Yeah. How many? Yeah.
I didn't have that many followers. It was more, people that I talked with every day and stuff. But man,
well, how many were in that group?
Stuff that went on.
How many were in that group?
It would rotate from, different times. But basically, I was a lone voice. But if somebody needed something, they would know to come and holler at me, and then I would go and get other people and say, we need to help, so-and-so with the tweet storm. We used to do tweet storms. They were effective. And
to find children. And I understand you found children with some of these.
There were two teenage girls that ran away from home, and their mom got on Twitter and they said, my daughter and her friend ran away. They have Twitter accounts. Help us. And so we got on there and we started tweeting about them. And at the time I thought, you know what, we could be putting a target on these girls' back, but at the same time, they're out there, they're running, and they are a target no matter what. So we just need to buckle up. And so everybody, they just went crazy on Twitter, and the girls saw that and they went home. They called their mom and went home. Another thing is that
you'd probably get shadow banned today for doing that and locked out for 12 hours for spamming.
Probably. Well, another thing is we did tweet storms for. I'm not going to use the girls' names. Their case is still kind of pending, but we did a tweet storm for these girls who had run away from their father, and Dr. Phil's producer saw our tweet storm and contacted one of the other sisters, and they actually had her on their show, but it was not favorable to her and was not what we wanted at all. So don't trust Dr. Phil, people. I don't trust him anymore. But
no. Well, yeah, we've had our issues. There was a great show that he put on, but it's been like crickets ever since with the
right.
The victim of the networks. And forgive me, I've forgotten her name, but it was a great show, but nothing. I mean,
the girl that was talking about having been trafficked and everything.
Yes.
That girl bothered me badly. I've got to say that I watched the interview and everything. She kept saying my handler, my handler.
Yeah, probably being handled, and I don't know if it's the show's fault, but.
Well, Dr. Phil exploits. Trust me, he exploits. The girl that we did the tweet storm for, the sisters, and the one sister, the older sister, was on Dr. Phil's show. She had to face her father, who had, done a lot of things that weren't right, that caused her sisters to run away. And she was knee to knee with him on the stage at Dr. Phil's show.
Yeah.
So Dr. Phil exploits.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anybody that's on mainstream successful on mainstream television that isn't a part of this. But I'd like to. I really want to hear. We've got about 15 minutes left, something like that. But I want it, which is never enough time. But I would love to hear. You got away at 19. How you did that, and how you got to today as a strong, confident, resource survivor of horrendous, unimaginable levels of sexual abuse, and now you're an advocate. You help other survivors. I want to hear about that story. Recovery, I think it's called, from this.
Well, I wouldn't say that my time, from the time I was 19 until now, I've really done a lot of crazy things. After the effects of that, and you just cannot do what you did to little kids and expect them to, be normal adults as well, because it didn't happen. Trust me, it did not happen.
No, and I don't mean to infer that was an event. It's obviously a process that's a lifelong process, and that you're still go through every day. But I just want to hear, how you did it, and how obviously you've made tremendous gains from the abuse to the person you are today and the person we're talking to. I mean, that's.
Well, I am a Christian, and I'm a strong Christian. I know God well, and He knows me well. I spend a lot of time at night praying and talking to God, and I hear from Him as well. And it was so amazing because the whole Pizzagate thing happened just before I went on a fast, or it happened right after I went on a fast for 30 days, just where you don't eat meat. And
wow, that's a commitment.
Well, for Howard, that's nothing, but for me, that was, But anyway,
for me, it's unimaginable. But I'm sorry.
Wow, I'm on a 27 year.
That's amazing, Howard. Amazing.
It's not. All right. Go on.
Well, one thing that I would like to say is to be aware of your surroundings as adults, be aware of your children that are around you. I cannot tell you how many children I could point in my direct vicinity, and there's one, and nothing can be done about it at this time, for one reason or another. And I know that, like survivors will talk about dead eyes. And I don't know I've never heard an explanation of what the dead eyes is, but what I look for is that child that no longer has that sparkle in their eyes. That's, and
yeah, the sign of the spirit death that's being inflicted, and your solution, which I think is many of, and it's my own experience, the spirituality, religion, people call it different things, that is so important to restore that spirit that was, broken. And I think that's what happens. It's a spiritual death that happens at the hands of others. And it's obvious that you have religious, spiritual connection that has allowed you to recover from this trauma. I mean, it's obvious, and all of you, every one of you, everyone. It's different. There are different, obviously, different religious beliefs that are in play here, but just spirituality. It's all the same thing. But God is God, and it's what that's a great part of the message, and it's I think integral to people who are survivors and functional, and to oppose to some of these victims who are survivors but turn into victimizers, that don't have that component, that don't have that relationship with religion or spirituality. So that's
there have been some religious people get pretty, crazy. Let's throw that in there.
Yeah.
Well,
what a loaded gun, because some of these religious organizations are pedophile networks. The Catholic Church.
Another incident that I just now thought about. I said that I had a foster sister. She was my same age, and she went to church. She went to a different church than I did. We both went to church, but different ones. Her pastor tried to molest her.
Yeah. And and this is a personal point, but I'll just make it. But religion and spirituality have nothing to do with each other. And your relationship with God or Christianity or whatever has nothing to do with organized religion. So if and I understand what a loaded gun that is, but that's a message that needs to get out too. Your own relationship with your God, whoever you think that is, has nothing to do with these organized religions or individuals within those religions that are perpetrating this abomination. So I think that
Jim Jones, evidently he started out right, and he started out not too far from where I lived for 25 years, and then just went off the deep end. And what is that guy, the LDS guy, not the
Warren Jeffs. Oh God.
They're doing a program about him right now because he's in prison still calling the shots for everybody.
Yeah, and we're talking about the secret government and deep state. Guess what? Guess who got a hold of Jim Jones? And guess who was hanging out? And the only guy who got out of Jonestown, one of the few that got out alive, was the CIA station chief. So, yeah.
Well, if people do simple internet searches, excuse me for 1 second. A lot of outrage. something came up and it was playing a video that I didn't mean to play. But if you do searches for child rape in religious organizations, a lot of stuff's going to come out. I caught one story out of Fayetteville, North Carolina. A pastor faces 142 counts of child rape stemming from, I believe, 1996 to 2009. Says he raped 4 children, including one of his neighbors. And and Catherine, you know that if in 13 years it wasn't just 4 children.
Oh, right. Oh, absolutely. Right.
Yeah, this guy had access.
And we're going to do a show on the Orthodox Jewish child rape that's going on, and I'm trying desperately to get a hold of that rabbi in New York that exposed it. So yeah, we're gonna. There's no we've talked extensively about the Catholic Church. It's occurring in the Christian Protestant. It's occurring everywhere, and
everywhere.
But
right.
Yeah,
it's like any organization that there is. Any organization. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Yeah. It's because it's everywhere.
When an estimated 1 in 4 female children and 1 in 6 male children will be sexually harmed before the age of 18. Well, just look around. And
right. That's one in right.
Wait a second, Howard. We hear those numbers over and over, and they've lost their impact. They've lost their power. We've got to start looking at these numbers. You see, 5 kids. Well, how many of them? They're there. And I have said, the different incidences that have happened throughout my life. And it sounds like, that's all I ever saw or experienced, which, was not true. But whenever that wasn't going on, there was this huge Disneyland persona being portrayed. But because we had to keep up that appearance, and my mother still lived like that. That's why I just couldn't take that anymore. When you get older,
and you got out, Catherine. You got away from that, and you had a lot of trauma and experience to go through, and you walked into a minefield, but you got away from it, and that's who I think you're talking to, and who I want to to talk to, that 16-year-old or 15-year-old or 18-year-old that needs to break away from that situation, and or hasn't come forward, or whatever the situation is, and that's your biggest, that's what I see as your message, and all the survivors' messages, is that you can get away from that. It's good. It's not easy, but recovery is possible, and it's taking place, and that's that's where I hope that this message goes tonight to somebody who's in a situation like that thinks, man, I can't get away from this. I have to sit here and endure this. But you're living proof that you can get away from it, and you can survive, and you can move on to be. Well,
it's a lot. It is easier in a lot of respects today than it was 30 years ago. But I do want to say this for someone who might be in that situation. Take care of yourself and take notes. I said that in the first show.
Yeah, you did.
Take notes, stash them someplace. It is your evidence, and it does make a difference. And you can tell that trusted teacher, check them out, watch, see who other kids go and talk to. You'll find that person, wait for that person. But if you can take someone with you to go and disclose, that's better. If someone finds himself in need to go to a medical facility, take as many witnesses as you can. And I mean, I hate to say it, but you just really have to protect yourself in that way. And so if you go there and someone doesn't take it that seriously, if you have 2 or 3 people with you, they take you more seriously. And you also have witnesses as to who said what and such. And it's important, especially in a legal process.
Absolutely. And that's what we found out. That's what you're telling us. Use your network. There is a network. Reach out. Reach out to the show. Reach out to Catherine on Twitter, to the other survivors that are on Twitter, and if we can be a resource, or we can find somebody that's a resource for you. And safety in numbers. We're getting that message, right, Howie?
Absolutely.
I was thinking about this earlier when I was thinking about what to say tonight. There was a young girl that had never disclosed before that got a hold of me on Twitter. And so she did that in direct message, and she kept it real offhandish in direct message and everything. And then something made me go and look at her main Twitter feed. On her main Twitter feed, she's like, I have a gun sitting here right in my hand. I'm fixing to use this gun. And I was like, help me, Jesus. So anyway, I did address that in direct message with her. But, that was something that happened on Twitter. But
well, we're my personal goal is, one day to, get this off of social media and have an organization where people can actually call and where we can put we can help, survivors, we can help, actual victims at the time. And, put pressure, on media, but coming at them as a nonprofit, as an organization that really wants to do something, not some fluff organization like, the National Center of Missing Exploited Children, what I consider to be, a fluff organization. It does very little with their $42 million a year. So, I think that's like the ultimate goal.
To that, Howard, the first thing that someone will ask you is, are you involved in an organization? Every time, in all the different things that I've had to deal with and stuff, the first thing they will ask me, are you involved in an organization? No, I'm just me,
Right. And if we have an actual organization with letterhead and, an email address for some reason, but that's, I believe that is the direction that this.
Yeah, trust me, that answer was not impressive.
Right. I understand. I've made phone calls too where they say, well, who are you? And I'm like, well, I'm Howard, like, well, right. Where are you from? Philadelphia, just sitting in my living room right now, like they want to know. Right. So, but hopefully we can get to that point.
Yeah. Yeah. And we are, we're getting there, and not as fast as we'd like, but, we will. And that's the message of hope. That's what the message is. Thank you, Catherine, for your message of hope.
Thank you, guys.
Stay on the line.
I'll do it.
Thank you, Kathy, Macaulay, everybody that's listening. Thank you. We'll see you Thursday.